You don't envy billionaires. You envy the guy 2 doors down. His car is worse than a billionaire's car. His holiday is worse. It bothers you more anyway. And that is not a flaw in your character. It is a piece of equipment that is about 11,000 years old. For most of human history, being rich was not discouraged. It was impossible. If your group walks, everything you own has to be carried by you. A stone blade, a hide, some beads, that is the ceiling, and your own arms enforce it. There is another limit people forget. Somebody in that group is carrying a child, so the real ceiling is not what you can lift. It is what you can lift, while also lifting a toddler across a river. Food was worse. Bring down a large animal, and you have hundreds of kilos of meat that will be rotten in 2 days. You cannot save it. You cannot bank it. Your only option is to put it inside other people. So you feed everyone. Not because you are generous, because a full belly in someone else's body is the only storage container that exists. And people asked, openly. In groups like this, walking up and asking someone for their spare knife was normal, and saying no was the strange behavior, not the asking. Wealth, in that world, was not a pile. It was a list of people who owed you a meal. That is the world your comparison instinct was built for. Not a planet of 8 billion strangers. A group of maybe 30 people whose faces you knew and whose belongings you could count from where you were sitting. 30 people is the entire scoreboard. So when your neighbor's new driveway gives you that small hot flicker, and a man with a private island gives you nothing at all, that is not hypocrisy. Your instrument only reads what it can see, which leaves a question. If hoarding was physically impossible for 200,000 years, something had to make it possible. Something had to break the ceiling. The thing that broke it was a seed. Grain does not rot. Wheat and barley, dried properly, sit in a pit for years and come out as food. Around 11,000 years ago, in the hills of the Middle East, people started keeping them instead of eating them. A pile of grain behaves nothing like a pile of meat. Meat forces generosity. It has a deadline. Grain has no deadline, so it has no reason to ever leave your hands. Grain can also be counted. Nobody can count a hunt. Anybody can count sacks. And the moment a thing is countable, it can be owned, measured, defended, lent out, taxed, and handed to your children after you die. Every one of those words is new. None of them meant anything before the pit. You cannot lend somebody a hunt. You cannot charge interest on a dead antelope. We know how much it mattered because of what humans did next. The oldest writing we have is not a poem, or a prayer, or a law. It is accounting. Little clay tablets recording how much grain and how many animals belonged to who. The first sentence our species bothered to make permanent was a receipt. Not a story about a god, not a name of a king, a number next to a jar, next to a man. Researchers still argue about the order of it all, whether people settled down and then started storing, or started storing and then settled down. That part is honestly unresolved. The effect is not. Once you can keep more than you need, sooner or later, somebody does, which leaves an obvious problem. These were not naive people. They had spent 200,000 years in groups that flattened anybody who got too pleased with himself. So why did they let it happen? They tried not to. And for a very long time, it worked. Foraging groups studied in the 20th century had an entire toolkit for cutting successful people back down. Among the Juhuansi of the Kalahari, a hunter who killed a huge animal got mocked for it, deliberately. Everyone would gather around the carcass and complain about how thin it was, how bony, how it was barely worth the walk. They went further than jokes. In that system, the meat did not belong to the man who fired the arrow. It belonged to whoever owned the arrow. And arrows moved around constantly, borrowed, and given as gifts, so the credit for a big kill kept landing on different people. They built a rule that made it hard to be the hero twice. An anthropologist named Richard Lee asked them why they did this. The answer was direct. A man who starts thinking he is a big man becomes dangerous to everyone, so we cool his heart. That is not rudeness. That is a machine for keeping people equal, and it ran for thousands of generations without ever being written down. Now look at what that machine needs in order to work. It needs the meat in the open. It needs everybody standing around the same carcass at the same moment, able to see exactly what one person is holding. Mockery is a weapon that only fires at things you can see. and then somebody dug a hole, filled it with grain, and put a lid on it. Nobody insults a sealed pit. Nobody laughs at a number. The wealth went underground, and the oldest tool humans had for stopping inequality suddenly had nothing left to aim at. Human nature did not change here. The lighting did. So what does a species look like once its brakes stop reaching the wheels? There is a cemetery in Bulgaria, near the Black Sea, called Varna. It is roughly 6,500 years old. Most of the graves are ordinary. A few pots, a blade. The kind of burial that says somebody lived and somebody else missed them. Then there is grave 43. One man buried with more worked gold than had been found in the entire rest of the world for that period put together. More than a kilo of it. Rings, plates, beads, hundreds of pieces. A gold-covered handle laid across his body. 2,000 years before the pyramids. And one man in one hole already owned more than everybody around him. Nobody cooled his heart. Nobody complained that his gold looked thin and bony. By the time he was buried, that conversation was no longer available to anyone. That is what a broken leveling system looks like from the inside. No war, no conquest, just storage, running quietly for a few thousand years until a single person could take the surplus of an entire society into the ground with him. And you are still running the old software. You do it in a car park. You do it scrolling. You do it at family dinners without meaning to. You still scan all day. Who has more? Who got more? Who is doing better than they ought to be? That scan is not greed. It is the leveling instinct still hunting for the carcass, still trying to cool somebody's heart. But the carcass is invisible now. The real piles sit in accounts you will never see, held by people you will never stand next to. It fires anyway. It has to fire at something. So the alarm picks the only target still in view. The driveway, the renovated kitchen, the holiday photos, the guy 2 doors down. You are not an envious person. You are a fairness alarm with nothing left to point at. That is the whole shape of your worst feeling. You inherited a system built for 30 people, in a world where every single thing anyone owned sat in plain sight, and you are running it inside a world where almost all of it is hidden. Your neighbor is not your enemy. Your neighbor is just the last visible thing, and the pit never went away. Every account, every deed, every locked door is the same idea as that first covered hole in the ground. Keep more than you need. Somewhere nobody can laugh at it. 200,000 years of humans made sure that was impossible. We undid it in about 11. Equality didn't die. It just got buried in the first storage pit.